Hey, hi, how you doing? This is the Gamertron, and welcome back to the Gamertron Show. I am joined once again by Grindhead Jim.
Hey, how's it going?
And we're here to, well, talk about shit, no duh. So,
Hey, I
today...
didn't clear talking about shit. Okay?
Oh, oh. Okay, I misunderstood. I will watch myself from now on when...
This subject stinks.
This is the perfect way to open a video. Shit jokes.
You can put them anywhere on YouTube and it will draw.
Hey, thank you for turning this around back about YouTube, because as much as my channel and your channel are about video games and such, YouTube is a big part of gaming. They wouldn't exist without each other, I think. YouTube has become a network where gamers can connect and communicate and watch each other's content, and gaming is there to provide the content for YouTube. They've really become one and the same, almost, gaming and YouTube. But however, it raises the question, though, if YouTube and gaming are so connected. Do the big-name YouTubers like Markiplier and PewDiePie, IGN, GameSpot, Smosh, all these, and many more that I'm not even thinking about or can't say off the top of my head, these people who have millions upon millions of subscribers, they have all these views, they have all this power, they have all this control, literally, depending on what games they upload on their channel, that could determine if a game is successful.
Absolutely.
Many games have risen and fallen due to the hearsay and the notoriety of YouTubers. Like, if it wasn't for PewDiePie and Markiplier, video games like Five Nights at Freddy's, To the Moon, so many Amnesia: The Dark Descent, of course, games like that wouldn't have sold millions of copies, wouldn't be as popular in pop culture as they are if it wasn't for those YouTubers. So, with this much power, Jim, I gotta ask you, do you think YouTubers who have millions of subscribers, YouTubers who have this much notoriety, do they have a responsibility to the gamers, to their viewers? Do they have a responsibility to help support video games, to always tell the truth, that sort of thing?
I would say absolutely, but not in the way most people are going to assume I'm talking about. I think there has to be a degree of integrity, and it's not that they have to be impartial. More than anything, they have to be genuine in the opinions that they levy. If they say they feel something, they should back that up, at least by it being really their opinion. When you have a subscriber base as deep as a PewDiePie, for example, you don't need to take sponsorships inside the gaming community itself, as far as developers and things like that. I think that you can make your living in other ways, kind of like an athlete who has a base salary, which is in this case, viewership, and then you've got sponsorships on top of that, like energy drinks or I don't know, fucking shoes. Like, who knows? Like, someone has to be out there. But I think that the second you start dipping into the pocket of a game developer or publisher, the integrity of your opinion gets tainted whether you want it to or not. Even with the transparency that a lot of YouTubers have, and I applaud them for it. I just don't think it's a smart move. That's my personal opinion on the subject. But ultimately, because there is so much sway, you've got to be able to show me a fairly definitive amount of impartiality when it comes to where your opinion is coming from. If it isn't coming from a pure base, like, that's my big thing, and because that's how journalism, that's where gaming journalism is going, right? When we're talking about like places like Game Informer, which is owned by GameStop, IGN, which is a very traditional media company that just happens to do gaming news. They operate much like a CNN or an MSNBC or what have you, or what's the word? British BBC.
BBC.
So,
yeah.
right. So it's like when you get to when the gaming gets big enough that we've got journalism, like news sources that are as big as any of their mainstream standard vanilla news outlets.
Counterparts. They're counterparts,
Right,
basically.
exactly. When you get to that point, you have to worry about the integrity of the information and the opinions that are being levied to the community at large. And it's something that concerns me a lot, really. Uh, I worry about it because any media, any form of information can be tainted very easily. And I think that the last vestige of true journalism, that is preserving the history of our culture, rests in the hands of individuals, in storytellers. And that's what a good YouTubing journalist is for gaming, is really just a historian and a storyteller. Like, here's where we were, on May 19th, 2015, when House of Wolves, for Destiny release. Here's where we were a week from then, and here's when Witcher 3 came out and all this other stuff. And here's where we were as a culture. And when you consider the millions of people that watch and whose opinions of the culture and their views and perspectives are formed by, their responsibility lies in making sure that the people have the opportunity to form an opinion based on the integrity of the people they respect. That's my concern, and that's where the responsibility lies, in my opinion.
You make some pretty good points there, Jim. But talking about integrity and obviously corruption with these YouTubers, a lot of people, I think, forget or are too easily misled into thinking certain people are corrupt, such as Angry Joe, Review Tech USA, and of course IGN and GameSpot. People assume those avenues and those people are corrupt because they do paid promotional advertising, even though they claim and state out loud that it's their own personal opinions and that they're not affected by the money, of course. They're just doing this to help sponsor a game they like and help a dev sponsor their game. But it doesn't matter. It gets to a point where it's not always entirely on the YouTubers, but on the people who watch them as well. I gotta play devil's advocate and look at it from other perspectives here, and when it comes to Angry Joe, Review Tech USA, IGN, GameSpot, and these people who say they're corrupt because they take paid promotional advertisement, well, how does that make them corrupt? They need to make money, they need to help advertise, they need to sponsor, and sure, someone can advertise and talk about a game for absolutely free if they want to, but by making this whole sponsor relationship with a dev company, you get access to more knowledge and features and stuff you can talk about that nobody else can.
Here's the difference, though. You can't compare someone like Angry Joe to someone like More Console, okay? Because Angry Joe is a reviewer. He's giving his opinion on something, and he's deciding on the quality of the subject matter based upon his experience with that product. Now, if the maker of that product pays him or, gives him any sort of financial feedback for that opinion, there's no way that it can be 100% partial. Human brain doesn't work that way. It just doesn't, whether we like it or not. Now, someone like More Console, who all he's doing is strictly giving news. He's saying, here's what I've heard about Destiny today. Here's what we're doing with this. Here's what we're doing about that. That's a lot different where, Bungie flies him out and then, the exclusive coverage and all this other stuff. That's a lot different than the guy that says, this game is going to be good or bad in my opinion. But if he's taking money, at that moment, his opinion becomes, in my opinion, journalistically invalid. If I were being paid by Bungie on a subsidy for my videos, my content about Destiny, and then someone asked me in that video, is Destiny good or bad? I'm telling you right now, don't trust what I had to say because I've got Bungie's fucking money in my pocket. I don't think that's fair, and there's really no point that can be swayed on that. I'm not saying don't expect sponsorships, don't accept money from companies. I'm saying depending upon the type of content that you do, if you want to have integrity in the type of content that you do, just be choosy with who you accept that money from, because the credibility of this culture and the culture as it exists on YouTube depends on people not taking a shortcut financially for the sake of undercutting the quality of what we're talking about.
Again, that's a good point, Jim. That is a really good point, but again, gotta play devil's advocate here. We assume automatically if they're paid, our opinion is swayed, and you even make the statement that if you were ever paid by Bungie and gave a glowing review of Destiny, you'd tell people not to trust you. But here's the thing, like I believe in capitalism. Granted, it is misused greatly, but I believe in capitalism, money moving, everybody helping each other out financially. But it gets to a point where, yes, money can corrupt. There's no doubt about it. But if we assume that if anyone at any time, like, takes just a single dollar from someone to say something good about a game, or have their opinion changed, we automatically assume that their opinion is altered and corrupt. Like, I know this is a difficult subject to fully express myself in. I'm probably stumbling over my words and sounding like a complete fool. What I'm trying to say is, we assume if someone is sponsored, that immediately that we can't trust their opinion, or that their opinion doesn't matter. Well, I've always been by the statement, this is kind of going a bit off topic, that not to trust any reviews, not to trust my reviews, any reviews. I always say, play the game, watch the movie for yourself. Judge something for yourself. That's always been my angle, but I don't know how else to say this. Like,
right,
assume corruption when there's possibly none. We always assume corruption if money is being dealt, and while that is true to a point, just assuming that everyone is corrupt when money changes hands is a bit, I don't know, is that wrong on our part?
I don't think so. I understand. I don't want to judge people based upon their business dealings. What I'm saying is, you need to be choosy in your business dealings if you want your integrity never to be compromised in the public eye. You know, perception is 9/10 of the law, okay, when it comes to, cultural opinion. I'm not talking about, absolutes when it comes to what's right or what's wrong. You're talking about responsibility to the fans. You're talking about responsibility to the culture. And the culture is going to make their judgment whether we like it or not. And if you want to avoid that judgment, if you want the culture to keep its integrity, the people that are shaping that culture have to have what is least perceived as unflappable integrity. You don't get to play it both ways. That's a luxury we cannot afford. I'm not saying that's the answer I want. I'm saying that's the way it is.
And that's a damn shame, unfortunately. I wish we could find a balance where money could exchange hands, people could all get something out of this, but in the end, it's just, I think after Gamergate and the whole gamer in journalism integrity debacle, things have really changed. The landscape for gaming journalism has really has really changed for both YouTube and other just websites that focus around gaming journalism. But one other thing, next, we're talking about YouTubers here, and YouTubers and gaming, and I didn't just mean responsibility in telling the truth. I mean responsibility in just supporting games, and because these YouTubers, PewDiePie, Markiplier, IGN GameSpot, they have the ability to shift the market. Their opinions, their viewerships have the ability to completely alter the gaming market. If PewDiePie or Markiplier plays a game, people watch it, and if Markiplier or PewDiePie likes the game because people value their opinions, they will go out and get them. Same thing with Angry Joe. However, I have to say, for Angry Joe's fans, I do enjoy Angry Joe's content. I think he's a good guy, awesome guy, but I have to admit, his fan base is very, very arrogant. They assume whatever score Joe gives a game, that is the quality of the game. They forget that he's just giving them his opinion. People seem to forget there's a difference between subjectivity and objectivity, and everybody assumes that Joe is giving something objective when it's not. It's subjective.
Right.
And
I think it's objectivity within the confines of the subjectivity of what type of gameplay a person likes. I have to say that I look at game reviews the same way I look at music reviews. What I look for in a reviewer is not, do I agree with them on a consistent basis. What I look for is their opinion consistent, whether I agree with it or not, and if I and are they very clear in what their perspective is? Do they give me the whys behind their opinion? Meaning that ultimately, I can disagree with somebody wholeheartedly, but if I understand why their opinion is the way it is, it helps me form an opinion on what I think I may enjoy out of the game or piece of art or what have you, because I know where they're coming from, and if I can appreciate that in and of itself, it makes me a more informed consumer. And I think that the spoon-fed, internet generation has lost that ability to think critically, or at least lost the, on many levels, lost the willingness to think objectively. They want someone to tell them whether the game's good or bad.
Not just think objectively, just think for themselves. Instead of forming their own opinion, they base their opinions on the opinions of others, and I think that's a big problem.
And I certainly agree with that. However, in a world where this is
that has showed up in every single video we have recorded together. The in a world shit that has happened every single video.
It happens in almost every single video I do, almost every single stream I do. It's one of my things.
But I have to put up like a counter for how many times you fit that into a video. I bet Nick's video record somehow that's going to get in there.
Well, see, now I have to. Now I have to.
Anyway, sorry I interrupted.
No, you're perfectly fine. But when we're in a society where this is the way people, form their opinion based on someone else's, then at that point, because they're taking responsibility out of their hands, then the onus is really on the people that are giving out that subjectivity to be as unflappable as they can afford to be. Because I understand that there's a realism in terms of making ends meet. All right. For example, Joe, because we'll stick with Joe for the time being. Joe recently built a computer from Alienware, and he got a hefty discount on it. In part because he's partially sponsored by them. He also is a former employee of the parent company, Dell. And he makes no bones about that. He doesn't make a big deal about it, but he doesn't make, huge waves about that fact. And that's to his credit. He says right up front, I used to work for Dell. I know what I'm getting when I get their service, and I know the guys that build this stuff. Like, I'm right down the street. For me, this is a good choice. This is why I think it could be a good choice for you as well. If you don't like it or you want to build it yourself, go right for it, but this is why I chose this. And then he goes into talking about what he got, why he got it. Now, is it a PC Master Race build? Not really. I mean, it's a really powerful build, but he paid a lot more than he probably should have for it, and he knew that. But he wanted to pay for it because he wanted what he wanted. And he made that choice very clear, versus somebody who may have taken a similar sponsorship and then basically went on to tell you why getting that is the only way to go. If you're thinking about getting a computer, don't bother with anything else. Just get this and you'll be happy. And then people that don't know any better would do that. And that would be irresponsible. I think that Joe is responsible enough to at least frame his opinions around the facts of why he feels the way he feels. That's the most important thing when we're talking about giving opinion. Because you can't stay objective. Like, that's not possible. It is a matter of opinion. That's subjective by nature, as you stated. And we've talked about this subject before. What I'm simply saying is, if you have a subjective opinion, if there's any facts that are not absolute that could possibly influence your opinion, those need to be out in the open, and a lot of YouTubers are really good about that, like Total Biscuit and others like him, where they say, look, this is a paid product placement, and they'll just put it right there out in Front Street. Boogie is very good about that, although I don't really tend to view him as a reviewer, more so as a commentator on the culture. And thank heavens for him, because he definitely helps bring a more mainstream feel to that kind of editorial conversation that desperately needs to be had as often as possible. I just think that transparency and integrity kind of go hand in hand. In my ideal world, would there never be people wouldn't be asked to give their opinions on something that they are being paid by. That would be amazing, and I would love it. But I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. What I'm simply calling for is there to be a lot of transparency, and when it can be avoided, to avoid it, pure and simple.
Again, Jesus, Jim, you're on a roll. Again, very good points. Very good points. However, I want to bring something else up before we finish off this video, because I get what you're talking about with transparency and whatnot, and the integrity and all that. But there's another side to the whole responsibility access. All right. See, with the power that these YouTubers have, not only should you believe that they have a responsibility to have integrity and be truthful and always tell the truth, that sort of thing, But with the power that they have over the gaming, the gaming market,
Sure.
the power they have over gaming, do they have a responsibility to help shift gaming in certain directions? Like, what was for what were the years? I guess through the years 2009 to 2012, people bitched and moaned about how we were in the age of the military shooter. There was nothing but military shooters.
Sure.
And now we're in a day and age where gamers are complaining about anything and everything. They want change, they want innovation, but at the same time they want the old school. Should these YouTubers support certain video games? Because when they support certain video games, gaming usually goes in a certain direction. When they supported Amnesia, look how many friggin' horror games came out because of their support.
Well, do I think they have a responsibility to do that? To a degree, yes, and to a degree, no. I think the responsibility is for them to, because example, just to kind of go back to my example to keep this all in the same framework, right? Angry Joe makes it really clear what kind of games he likes and why he likes those kinds of games and what he likes. You'll notice a pattern in his reviews and his Let's Plays and the games that he focuses on, and it's pretty easy to figure out the kinds of things that he likes. So as a result, when he is talking about something or he's emphasizing how much he likes a certain product, it's easy for you to put that and weigh his opinion against what you know about his perspective on games. Because I know he likes real-time strategy a lot, and he likes
right. Total War, Civilization.
Yeah, and he likes his role-playing games a lot. He likes variety. He likes to be able to do whatever he wants. He likes customization. So when he gives his opinion on something that isn't within that genre, I'm going to take it with a grain of salt because I know that's just not the kind of game he's into in the first place. It helps me to understand better. It helps me for my own opinion because I know where he's coming from. And I think that just like when we're talking about journalistic integrity, I think subjective integrity is just as important because we're dealing with something where if I'm going to tell from a mile away if someone's doing a Let's Play and they don't genuinely like the game, I'm going to see that a mile away. And I think that there's integrity to be had there too. I think there's a responsibility
if someone's Let's Playing something just because it's popular,
or just playing it because they feel like it needs to be done rather than they want to do it. Support the things you want to support because you want to support them. Don't support them because you think it needs to go that way. Okay, I'll give you another example of that on a much, much smaller scale. When I was taking a break from Destiny and a couple other games, one of the games that I pulled out was Need for Speed Rivals, and I went on to play Burnout Paradise for a couple days. Only because I was like, you know what, I need to play something different to kind of wash the taste of the other games out of my mouth to save myself from the burnout. But I don't want to not game. So I did that. The thing was, though, because I was forcing myself to play a different type of game that I wasn't naturally in the mood to play, my gameplay experience suffered for it. Don't you think that if someone were talking to me in a stream or something about those games, that would not also affect the mood of my stream? And what if that's the first time someone's ever saw gameplay of either of those games and I'm not appearing to have a very good time? Would they not think that the game was not very good just by virtue of my nonverbal body language, and just the tone of my voice? Is that fair to the game? Regardless of whether or not that genre needs a push, it's really more important that I push things in a natural, organic way with integrity, with honesty. So when I talk about integrity and honesty, it's as much honesty and integrity to oneself as it is to the culture at hand, because that's how you grow a culture. People tend to think of culture as these personified things. No, it's not personified. It's made up of people, and the people within that culture need to have honesty with themselves and with what they're doing in order to make sure that culture continues to grow. And instead of being inbred, which is what we're really in danger of doing if we cease to be honest with ourselves and each other about how we want this medium to grow, how we want this type of storytelling to develop. If we don't have those kinds of conversations like this, our culture is going to become the next reality TV or pet rock syndrome, and I don't want to see that happen.
Oh god, same here. Oh God, reality TV. No, I do not want this to go
Yeah,
anywhere near where
because
reality TV is gone.
think about it. When reality TV started out, it was really compelling because it was just turn on the camera and see what happens. You give them a framework and they go. And it's become something else entirely. It's become completely contrived. There's no integrity in it. There's nothing to be surprised from it. And it's just feeding upon itself until it's inbred. And next thing you know, there's millions of people watching Sketty on TV. And gaming is headed in that direction if we don't weed out the bullshit. And the way we weed out the bullshit is just by being honest about how we feel. But the way to keep that honesty intact is to make sure we're framing that opinion with fact, as far as saying, I don't like this particular game because of this. I don't like this developer because of what I see in the practices here, here, and here. Like, most of the best opinions that I've heard are typically based in fact or trends, or in a perfect world, both. You know what I mean? It's just one of these things that we are in danger of losing, but we cannot afford to lose. It's just that willingness to look yourself and your culture in the mirror and be straight, from the hip. Just shoot straight, speak the truth. I think that if you're a person of influence, you have that much more of a responsibility to do that, because there are people that value your opinion. There are people that are still forming the way that in which they form their opinions. I formed much of my opinion on art, music, games, about based on people I respect's perspective on those things, because people can't afford to play every single thing for themselves. The YouTube videos are a window into the culture, and it's not like I grew up with games. And we didn't have the outlets we had today. So it was trial and error. And I kind of learned what I do and don't like. I learned the tricks of how marketing can fool you and things like that. And without that, self-taught experience, maybe I wouldn't be as objective as I can be at times. Maybe I wouldn't be thinking as critically as I can. Now, a kid that's in middle school that wants to know about a game, all he's got to do is go to YouTube, and he can find out what people think about it. But if he isn't given the proper perspective or the framework of that opinion, all he can do is take it at face value what he's given, or she. So I think that's dangerous if we don't pay attention to what we're showing people. If we're not taking the responsibility to say, okay, here is why. Show, don't tell, right? Show them why you feel that way, instead of just forcing an opinion down somebody's throat. So whether you're a big YouTuber or a little YouTuber or a YouTube watcher, everyone shares the responsibility to do the research, to be honest, and to really consider all the viewpoints before making a decision in any direction. That's how the culture is going to thrive.
I can't help but applaud you, man. I couldn't say it better. I couldn't say it better myself. That was something right there. I agree with you almost completely, but just one last thing. But there is one last thing I need to bring up, though. Sure. I agree that if you're on YouTube and you're sharing your opinion, then you have a responsibility, absolutely. But people are people, and there are people out there who harass, look down on, or just outright attack other people because they made a mistake or they don't agree with their opinion. And as a person, if you're just doing this casually for fun, and you mess up or you don't think of something and someone else thought of it, who's right, who's wrong there? Is it the YouTuber's fault that they didn't do more research or pay more attention, think more? Or is the audience being way too harsh? Because while the YouTuber does have a responsibility, do we, not also the viewers, have a responsibility to tame our expectations and think outside the box? Well, maybe he wasn't thinking about that, or he's lying to me, that right. Sort of thing.
And I certainly understand that. It's a shared responsibility. If the YouTuber is called on a fact or mistake, they simply can... Their responsibility at that point is to do the research to see if that is the truth or not. And if it is, to say, hey, yeah, I made a mistake. Thanks for calling it out. And leave it at that. The viewer has a right to say those things because you have to consider that it's not always the material so much as the delivery. So I think we have to temper our criticisms of others and ourselves too. We don't want to be too hard on anybody, especially ourselves, because we're all learning, especially if we're new at this. But I think you have to do the best you possibly can on both sides of that computer. And I think the better we are at just trying to grow together, the better we're going to be as a culture as it goes on. Because we're not just talking about opinions on games, we're talking about how the culture is viewed and how we interact with one another. I find it hilarious and very encouraging that the word noob is hardly ever used anymore.
I know, right?
I hear it as like a callback, and I would say that especially with like places like Reddit and things of that nature, the gaming community as a whole is far more helpful than it's hurtful most of the time. On YouTube, for example, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of people that are idiots, but they're always going to be idiots everywhere. I mean, per capita.
It's impossible to avoid them,
Right.
unfortunately.
Right. So, but I would say by and large, people are awesome. Like even when they're being kind of jerky, they're being awesome. For example, again, it's not the material, it's the delivery, right? There have been several subscribers that I've gained from your channel, which thank you, by the way, if you've done this, and thank you, of course, for helping me out. Some of them really, really cool. But all of them have very constructive criticism. All of them have very constructive things to say or just nice things to say. Sometimes the wrapping paper stinks a little bit. You have to you got to get past the packaging to figure out what they're trying to say, because we have to understand as individuals that when you're trying to communicate in a medium that is impossible to convey emotion in text, especially in such short bursts, you have to take that point with a grain of salt. That's why I enjoy speaking on YouTube as much as I do, because it affords me the opportunity to say my opinion exactly as I mean for it to be said. And again, that's where the responsibility lies. If I'm being honest and doing the best I can to convey how I feel or what I think about a certain subject matter, and someone has, some criticism, great. But the second that I'm trying to please somebody else for the wrong reasons, it loses the integrity. It loses, the whole reason that we do this sort of thing in the first place. So I just think I'm talking a bit in circles here, which I apologize for, but
No problem.
really what this comes down to is just the fact that we have to share the responsibility. So we talk about, the original question was, do YouTubers have a responsibility? You goddamn right we do. Big or small, we have a responsibility, because every YouTube video has a potential to be someone's first about a game or at all. So you have to do the best you can. People make mistakes. That's going to happen. That's just a fact. But what you do with the information, what you do with the experience on both sides of that keyboard, are what are going to make the difference. It's really simple to correct one way or the other.
Well, I think that's a video, Jim. I really think that's a video. Thank you so much for coming by and talking. I hope everybody watching takes your words to heart. And thank you for opening my mind up, too, because you've given me a whole new perspective on this that I didn't think of. As being a YouTuber and a viewer, I think of myself mostly as a YouTuber, and I never thought to think of it from such a perspective. So thank you for opening my mind, and hopefully opening the mind of everybody who's watching this video. Thank you so much for the conversation, and if more people want to hear you talk about video games and whatnot, where do they have to go?
They can go to grindheadgym.com, where they're going to find links to my YouTube, which is youtube.grindheadgym.com, or my Twitch channel, which is twitch.grindheadgym.com. And we do podcasts and do gaming and Let's Plays and everything in between. All with
lots
integrity.
Of Destiny live streams.
Yeah,
with integrity.
Well, I don't know about the Destiny live streams having much integrity beyond, oh my god, I love Destiny! But aside from that, we try to keep it clean over there. So, in terms of deed, not language, because we fucking swear over there.
I believe you. Anyways, this has been a video. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you for joining, Jim, and I will see you all later.